Welcome! I'm glad you're here. You're listening to Banjo Chat, where I bring in amazing banjo players and chat with them about their life, their music, their stories, their pitfalls, inspirations, and advice. So, join us on this journey into Banjo Chat. Hello, and welcome to the Banjo Chat. I'm your host, Hillary Hawk, and we are here in Season 2. All right, we're doing it. And how are you doing? Are you walking to work? Are you driving with the sunset in the back? What's going on? You know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about you. How are you doing? Just want to let you know that we have finally buckled and made a Patreon page. It is called patreon.com/banjochat. And what that is a way to support us. You know, I don't have ads on here. I try to keep it clean. We're sick of ads, you know. But if you do feel like supporting what we're doing here, you can subscribe for $2 a month. $2 a month. That's nothing. $5 a month or $10 a month. Anyway, check it out. It's patreon.com/banjochat. That's what's going on right now. We have snow here on the ground in New York City, and it's what I call the dog days of winter. The daylight is just a little too short. It's still getting dark early, and we are slipping around in ice. I know you Southern and West Coast listeners just can't understand. You guys walk around outside with no coat on and look up at the sky and smile, and while we're here, we crunch around in our pea coats with one button missing and threadbare gloves from Target. Oh yes, here we are. I do want to mention one show that's coming up in the New York City area. At the end of March, I'll be at Lincoln Center on March 29th with Cynthia Sayer and the Banjo Experience, where we'll be playing some old jazz tunes with an assortment of banjos big and small. I'll be there along with some other great players and representing the piccolo banjo side of things. I'm not really sure how I'm going to do that, but come to the show and find out, and I'll include a link below for that. So, I want to introduce our next guest. She is a prolific songwriter and also a Grammy Award-winning songwriter, and she has multiple Grammy nominations along with her partner. She is a trailblazer, a leader in the banjo world, a producer, a teacher. She is immersed in folk, country, old-time, traditional music, jazz, music from around the world. And she's currently on tour with her project From China to Appalachia, and she has even entered into the theater world with her show All Wigged Out. She's been one of my role models and someone lending me a hand my whole, what you'd call, banjo career. I'm so happy to welcome to the Banjo Chat, Cathy Fink.
Hey, Hillary, it is great to be here, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm so happy you're here. So you're in Baltimore, do I have that right?
I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland. They're dangerously close to each other.
That's a good way to put it. Cool. Well, I was just down in D.C. I was actually down at the Kennedy Center doing a show, and I ran into my friend Chris Bacon, and he randomly brought you up to me. He was talking about you and that he collaborated with you, and I was like, wait, what? And I saw that you did a hip-hop or a beatbox album with him.
We did an album for kids called Banjo to Beatbox. Chris was one of our artists in residence at the Music Center at Strathmore, which is in Montgomery County, Maryland. It's a phenomenal performing arts center, and the only performing arts center I'm aware of that has a very amazing artist in residence program that supports local artists. It's a program through which they apply, they audition. 6 artists a year between the ages of 16 and 32 get into that program. And then I've been working in the program. This is my 19th year as a mentor and an advisor. And they get literally 9 months worth of professional business and performing, mentoring, workshops, seminars, and opportunities. So Chris was an artist in residence. I'm going to make this up around 2004 or 5 or 6, something like that. And we were sitting around for a meeting that we were waiting for someone else, and I had my banjo, and I said, I think banjo and beatbox could work out pretty well. And we started playing some tunes and having fun, and that got out of hand. And the next thing you know, we did a kids album that mashed up some old-time music with some beatbox and some other things. It was nominated for a Grammy, so that's where Chris Bacon got his Grammy nomination from. And it was a really big time. And a lot of the collaborations that I've done in the past 15 years or so have come from that experience at Strathmore with amazing people, including the one that you talked about that we're on tour with right now, from China to Appalachia. Chao Tian is a classical Chinese hammer dulcimer player. It's called the Yangqin. And she was an artist in residence about 6 years ago, and we started hanging out, collaborating, jamming, and once again it got out of hand and it turned into a show that we are just having a blast with. Marcy Marxer on cello, banjo, guitar, ukulele, and mandolin. I'm playing primarily banjo and guitar. Marcy also plays some percussion, and Chao's on the Yangqin, but she also plays something that we call the Four Treasures, and it's a little like four bamboo sticks. They look like bones, American bones, but they sound completely different. And that has been a wonderful collaboration and has pushed us all to sort of think outside the box of what we're used to playing.
Wow. Okay. So I didn't realize that you were so involved in the Strathmore thing. I didn't realize that you were doing that. I mean, you've mentioned it to me like just in passing before, but that sounds amazing, and that you're helping artists kind of coming up and learn these mentorship things. Especially because I feel like you have the missing piece that a lot of us artists don't have, and that is the business savvy. Like, that's something that you have. And if you're mentoring people through that, I feel like that is just key. That's like a really, really important part of being a musician.
You know, I don't know if I'd call it savvy. I'd just say I make it up every day. That's what I've been doing for 50 years.
Well, you're good at it. That's apparent. I mean, just, yeah, getting that, I don't know, just putting together. I mean, I was going to talk about this anyway, but I feel like you have a understanding of quality and of how to create music and songs that just work. Like, they work in the industry, and not saying like the industry is what you're shooting for, but like the multiple Grammy nominations, and and you're driven and you're focused, and you seem to have like an understanding of how things work in music. Does that make sense?
Well, I have an understanding about how certain things work. I'm not a household name. I'm not super famous, but I make a good living, and my dream in helping other people is to help them use their art to accomplish what they're trying to do. And most of the people that I work with are trying to do more than make music. They're trying to use their music for multiple purposes. It might be engaging kids and families. It might be, right now we have an artist who's Korean American, and he's really trying to make some connections there where people better understand where he's coming from. In the China to Appalachia program, we're finding a lot of people are commenting on our social media, oh my goodness, I'm Chinese American, and I never thought I'd hear myself in this music. And so I feel like it's really about helping people strive for the connections they're trying to make. It's not about my agenda, it's understanding their agenda and then trying to put together some action steps. And what you come to understand after 50 years of this, and I understood it after 3 days, is that, my motto, I've always said, hey, if I was going to be buried, which I don't plan on doing, but, if there was a gravestone, all I needed to say is, you're either trying or you're not trying. She tried. And, so you just get up every day and you do it. You put in the work, you put in the practice, you put in the love, you put in the connections. You work it as hard as you can work it, and you see people in the industry who deserve, in my humble opinion, way more than they get. And you see some people in the industry who get a whole lot for a whole lot less work. You can't think fair, unfair, right, not right. You can think about, here's what I do, and I'm going to do the best I can at it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I totally agree. And I was wondering, what was your turning point for you with music? When did you feel like you wanted to do this as a career? Like, that you knew that this was going to be what you did for a living?
Interesting question. It's a very interesting question. I've been involved with music all my life. I always loved singing. I was in every chorus or choir I could get into. I played piano for a couple of years and, quit the piano lessons, but my next door neighbor best friend got her guitar when she was 12. And of course, I had to get a guitar and guitar lessons when I was 12. And I loved it. And after 6 months, my lessons were over. Truth being told, and my mother didn't want to say this out loud, is that she really couldn't afford them. But that was over, and I think deep down she thought, Cathy will give this up pretty soon anyway. And her dream didn't come true along those lines. I just kept on playing. I met people who played. I learned off of recordings. I started teaching guitar when I was about 17. And went and took a bunch of adventures. I went to Oberlin College for 1 semester, not in the music school, but I took some music classes. During my January project, where you do something unrelated to your studies, I found out that I had a distant cousin who worked on the Navajo Indian Reservation at the first bilingual, bicultural, community-controlled school on a reservation. And she found me some work there for the month of January. I thought it was way more interesting than college. Quit Oberlin, stayed on the reservation, sort of became the music teacher. They didn't have one at this school. And I was pretty young. I was like 18. I remembered all my songs from childhood. And so I'd be visiting the classrooms. That's actually where I first heard country music, because country music was the thing on the reservation. These kids had 8-track cassette players, and they were on endless loop on Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson, who we got to see in person in some school gymnasium. And
so wait, where was this? Where
Rough
were
Rock
you?
Demonstration School. I think it's now called Rough Rock Community School outside of Chinle, Arizona. And
Oh, wow.
And so that's when I started actually playing music with kids. I had previously at home in high school volunteered in programs that tutored kids from the inner city. And, towards about, February, March, the teachers were looking at me going, "What you going to do next year?" I went, They said, "Well, you speak French. Go to McGill University." And I didn't have a clue. I applied to McGill University. The application was cheap. There was none of this junk like writing a 20-page essay on, how you're going to change the life of everybody on the campus. And I got into McGill, and lo and behold, it was also affordable. And I had heard that there was a great coffee house scene up there. So basically in 1973, probably, it might have been the end of 72 or it might have been 73, I moved to Montreal. I went to McGill for 1 year. I started attending all the coffee houses. I started going to all the open mics and singing the same 3 Joni Mitchell, Leonard Cohen songs for months and months and months. I'm sure people dreaded the moment that Cathy Fink was going to come. Meantime, I took up Appalachian dulcimer. And that was initially from hearing a combination of Joni Mitchell and Richard and Mimi Farina. Richard Farina was a wonderful, wonderful dulcimer player, and he wrote some great instrumentals. And that led me to listening to more traditional Appalachian music. That led me to dig into Gene Ritchie, to Paul Clayton. And the Montreal folk music scene had a lot of good trad players. That's where I first heard somebody play Freight Train, going so fast. And I said, "Show me how you do that," And so that summer, I got a grant. We call them Only in Canada grants. I got a grant to take a troupe of musicians in to perform at institutions all over the city. And we made something like $70 a week for the whole summer. And at the end of the summer, I had saved about $700 or $800. And I went, holy crap, I'm rich.
Okay, yeah, $70. Wait, when was this?
Maybe 73.
Okay, so I guess I don't know how much money that is.
I don't know. You'd have to do the math. But basically, I had $700 in my bank account, and I went, holy crap, I'm rich. Well, my share of the rent was like $32 a month. My share of the groceries was like
you're rich.
$8 a week. And I went, I'm going to try and do this for a living. And if I never get a gig, I have enough money to live on for the year, and I'll go to the next plan. And if I get a gig, then I will have more than enough money to live on. That's really all I was thinking of. And I started teaching throughout college. I had been substitute teaching in daycare centers, and they all wanted the sub who brought the guitar and played music with the kids. I started reaching out to, there were only 5 coffee houses. It became pretty easy to realize that you're not going to make a living playing each one of these places once a year. I started thinking about, well, where else might they enjoy music? And I started thinking outside the box, and I literally went to the phone book and wrote handwritten letters to every community center, every senior center, anything that looked like club or community or whatever, and suggested that I could come do a program for them. And lo and behold, that's what happened. And just kept on going. And, it's no different now. It's 50 years later, and you just do it by email, and you have more information at your fingertips. But
you're pretty extroverted. Like, I feel like for some people that would have been really hard.
Well, extroverted, that's extrovert is an interesting terminology. I can be extroverted when I need to. I'm also that person in the days when most of this happened by phone. It's like, maybe they just won't answer and I don't have to talk to them. I think it looks extroverted because I'm so busy, but I also value my quiet and private time. And I may be more of an introvert than it looks, but I find that word confusing. I am driven. If I take away the word extrovert, I'm driven. I'm driven to do things I'm really interested in. I'm driven to help other people do things that they're interested in. I'm driven to create. I'm driven to work on social justice issues, and I have the mind of a self-employed person. So, there is no vacation unless you take a vacation. Your boss is never going to say, hey, it's time for a vacation. You are your boss, and there's always something else to do. And, that's just sort of...
Yeah, no, and I feel like, especially for me right now, a lot of my life has been, like, self-involved because I'm a musician trying to make a living. So everything I do is really just to keep myself afloat, especially here in New York City. And I've been feeling like I want to interact more with people, giving back, but I really don't have the time or money to volunteer anything,
Well, and the other challenge with that, and I struggle with that whole self-involved part of it, and I managed to do a fair amount of volunteer work, but the other part of that is there's some kinds of volunteer work that are not going to work because you're on the road, because you have a lesson to give, because you have a performance, because you have to prepare for a performance, And so I think that's one of the challenges is, how do you figure out fitting it all in? And, at some point I reconcile, and of course I wasn't willing to do this until about 5 years ago, but at some point I reconcile, I'm not going to fit it all in.
Yeah.
Just fit in what I can fit in.
Yeah.
And then that's what I did.
Yeah. So what are you trying to fit in right now, like in your life? Like, what are your main things that you're like, okay, these are my core values. This is what I'm trying to do right now.
That's such a hard question. It's such a hard question.
I just popped that one out. I'm sorry.
My core values are, as much as possible, to connect the music that I'm playing with community and empower community through that. And I feel like the music that Marcy and I have done for 50 years has always been centered on that. And of course, I'll give an extra shout out to the music that we do for kids and families along those lines that has always worked to make people feel valued, included, important, and most importantly, to help kids and families communicate with each other through music. I feel like that's always been a centerpiece. Right now, with From China to Appalachia, I feel like we're broadening people's minds about how people can communicate and who can communicate and how it happens. And we just recently also are starting a new group that is going to be called Cathy and Marcy's Old Time Coalition. And it's with Rachel Eddy on fiddle and guitar and some other instruments, and Becky Hill, percussive dance. And we've all worked together off and on for years and years and years in various different configurations, and we're codifying it now into a group that not only talks about the conversation between percussive dance and the music, but again, how we use that to build community, to build participation, to help people understand the value of what we like to call social music.
Yeah, that's great. Like I feel like for myself, I've always thought of you as immersed in traditional music with banjo. Like to me, because I study banjo and I that's what I do. Like you've always been this banjo role model, someone that's been immersed in banjo, and like that's how I think of you. And probably for some of our listeners too. And it's so great to hear how much you're giving back. Not that I'm amazed, but I think that there's so much more that you're doing that I didn't realize. That's hard to find, like when I'm digging through, like you're doing like the soul's work. Like it's great.
Well, I don't think there's any value to constantly be on social media saying, I did this, I did this, I did this. It's just, what are you doing it for? When it makes me happy is when I helped somebody write a grant and they got the grant and they can brag that they got the grant, or learned a new tune. One of my favorite banjo students, I teach a lot online. I have, literally thousands of online lessons through TrueFire and now Peghead Nation, where I teach the Maybelle Carter style scratch guitar, and homespun tapes. Marcy and I, between us, have over 20 different instructional things on homespun, from learn to yodel to learn to sing harmony to making and playing homemade instruments, all kinds of things. And now I can't remember why I was talking about all that. Give me a hint.
Well, let me just say, like, okay, we're saying like some accomplishments of your teaching, and shout out to Marcy, because we haven't really like talked about how much Marcy has been your co-conspirator and your partner in crime through all these years. But I was going to say that you were doing this and making these leaps and bounds at a time when there was really not many women doing this. And I know that's kind of apparent, to us because we're living in this world, but I think it's worth mentioning that you really, like, you broke some new ground, I feel like, for us.
Well, in 1980, I was the first woman to win the West Virginia State Old Time Banjo Contest. And in giving our 50 years of archives to UNC Chapel Hill, the Southern Folklife Collection, we finally came across the front page article that came out in the Glenville newspaper that week. And it was a picture of me, and it was like, it's a girl. That's I mean, it didn't exactly say it's a girl, but it was pretty darn close to it.
Yeah, like, look at this. It's a girl.
Look at this. And, that's always kind of boggled my mind a bit, even in the 70s when I was playing bluegrass banjo a lot on the road in Canada. And literally, and I know so many of my peers went through this as well. Oh my God, you're flat picking the guitar and you're a girl. Oh my God, you're playing bluegrass banjo and you're a girl. Now I feel like, I'm in a series, or I'm part of a long line of people who've been breaking those glass ceilings. It just takes some people longer to notice that the glass ceiling was broken than other people, but it's happening, and that's great. I mean, Cynthia Sayer winning the Steve Martin Banjo Prize, and, talking about people who are really amazing. Marcy Marxer is an amazing banjo player. She reinvented the cello banjo from the early 1900s into a very contemporary, cool instrument. She's also an amazing tenor banjo player and has studied jazz tenor banjo and all different styles of tenor banjo. And she plays every hybrid banjo there is. But in terms of my banjo style, I feel like one of the things that's happened in the last 15 years that Marcy's been playing cello banjo is that we tuned in very quickly to a way that the two banjos, my 5-string and her cello banjo, work beautifully together. And sometimes it's by playing note for note exactly the same thing, and sometimes it's by knowing how to back each other up so the other person's things are being more featured. But I think one of the things is that her incredible creativity and musicianship is always pushing me to, okay, how am I gonna come up to that? And that's really fun. And she doesn't get much credit in banjo world, but she's pretty damn amazing.
No, Marcy's the best, and I see it, and she's amazing, and I love listening to the two you play, and you both are geniuses in my opinion. You guys are amazing. Well, actually, we're gonna do a little bit of listening to your music. This is my segue. Went down a big rabbit hole, and I really got immersed in the Banjo Talkin' album. I can't remember what year it was, maybe 2017, I'm not sure.
I think Banjo Talkin' was around 2007, which is this.
Oh,
it simultaneously came out with the Old Time Banjo Festival.
Ah, okay, great. Well, I hope you don't mind. This is kind of what I wanted to just dig into today.
Go for it.
Okay, great. There's a track here called What the Lord Done Give You. And let's just take a listen to it, and then we'll talk about it a little.
Better start shouting, shouting. Better start singing, singing. Better start praying, praying. Lord, what the Lord done give you. Better start giving, giving. Better start thanking, thanking. Better start dancing, dancing. Pass on what the Lord done give you.
We just listened to What the Lord Done Give You from your Banjo Talkin' album, and right from the beginning, I love this track. It's just you and the voice and the banjo. It's enough. Like, that's all you need. It's so beautiful, and obviously it has, the black banjo influence in the song, but there's a quality to your singing that really gets me in this track, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to choose it. It reminds me a little bit of John Hartford, like your singing quality and your banjo playing. It's perfect to me. I love it so much.
I'm really glad you picked this song out because it kind of brings forward a little bit of everything that I care about. I care about the tradition. I care about where the banjo came from. I care about the spirituality between the banjo and the voice. And I feel like this song is a call to action. And I'm playing it on a George Wonderlook fretless banjo, not a gourd banjo, but it's got a great big pot on it. And literally, it's actually got gut strings on it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful banjo with its own unique sound. The song was hard to record to get both the tone of the banjo and my voice that I wanted. But I ended up just feeling, the song's obviously some kind of a prayer. And I'm big on non-denominational prayers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So wait, why was it hard to record? Was it just to get like that natural sound?
Yeah, and the banjo is huge. So in holding it, it's going to be somehow bleeding into that vocal mic in a way that you may or may not want. And so just futzing with mic placement took a long time. and then you're futzing with getting the performance that you want.
Yeah, yeah. No, it really comes across. It's so good, and I've never heard this song before.
Well, because I don't take that banjo many places, I don't end up performing it a lot, but I have performed it a handful of times and particularly love performing it when there's a percussive dancer who can be part of that as well. So I think that's going to come back into the repertoire in the work that we're doing with Becky Hill.
Oh, I hope so. That's great. Yeah, I can hear a lot of that working in there, and it's all you need. That's like when I first heard it, I was like, that's all you need right there. You know, you don't need a band. You just play that.
Be your own band.
Be your own band. Well, okay, let's listen to another tune from the same album. This one is Prayer of a Miner's Child, and this is a Doc Boggs tune, right?
It's a Doc Boggs tune with a really interesting history, in that there was a 16-year-old girl whose name at the moment I have forgotten. I'd have to look at the liner notes. But long ago, she wrote a poem that landed in the United Mine Workers magazine. Doc Boggs saw that poem. He was a mine worker. He put it to music. And eventually it was recorded and on a Doc Boggs album on Folkways Records. I've always loved that song. And when I decided to record it, I thought, I wonder if there's any way I can find out how to reach the person who wrote that poem, because they deserve any royalties. And I contacted my friend Joe Uline, who had worked a lot with the United Mine Workers, and he contacted folks there. They dug up the exact magazine, the name of the person, found her for me, and I contacted her. And there was a lot of magic that went with that, and a few other people have since recorded the song, and because of that experience, they were able to get royalties to the right place. And, it's not that the royalties mean, somebody's going to get more than a cup of coffee and a sandwich. It means that credit goes to the right place, and it happens as it should.
Right. Like, nobody's getting rich, but let's give people credit.
Nobody's getting rich, but I certainly shouldn't be benefiting from that portion of somebody else's creation.
Yeah. Well, let's take a listen to it. Here we go.
He's just an old coal miner, Lord. That's all he's ever been. He's worked his life down in the mines with all the other men. Safe and be with him when he goes into that mine, and also help him stay away from the unemployment line.
All right, great. That was Prayer of a Miner's Child, and it's so beautiful. And are you in that mountain miner tuning, sawmill tuning for this one?
I'm just in a regular old modal tuning. I don't remember what key I'm in. If you were in G, it would be G, D, G, C, D.
Yeah, it's great.
And Doc Boggs used a different tuning and a complicated finger picking method, and I played with all of that, but the keys that he sings in are accommodated by his tunings, and I couldn't sing in those keys. So I instead went for a very sparse sound, doing something that I like to call pedaling, where I'm going back and forth between a string and the first string and the fifth string, using both the first and fifth strings both as drones. And it leaves a lot of space, and I can add what I want around that. And it's kind of like the less you put in there, the better off you are.
Yeah, I really like that. It almost has like a blues kind of element to it, along with the modal tuning. It's really nice. And I love your use of brushes in the instrumental sections. I'm a brushy player, but I don't brush the way that you brush, and you're putting them in spots that I like, extra spots that I wouldn't put them in, and it's really, I feel like it's really cool. I'm really like being into that, you know.
And that for me is all intuitive. It's just, I'd say it's gone past me thinking about it, and it's just what my hand does.
Yeah. No, I love it. Yeah, like it's not the arpeggiated, not the little rakes. I like that too, but it's like these brushes that you're putting in, like it's not my style. Like I like your style a lot. And I'm like, that's so cool. I love where you put that. That's a cool feeling. Yeah, it's really, yeah, I love listening to it. Yeah.
You know,
cool.
One thing I'd love to do is give a shout out to my first banjo teacher. I was an arbitrary banjo player. One of my best friends from high school, who taught me a lot on the guitar, and we used to hang out together a lot in high school. I came home from McGill on a break once, and he said, "Hey, I'm selling this banjo for $85. You want it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And I took his banjo and I went back to Montreal, and I opened the Pete Seeger book, and I started learning how to do Pete's up-picking style. And I kind of got there, and then I realized, well, yeah, but I want to play clawhammer, and I had trained my fingers to do that up-picking style, and they were not interested in being retrained. So I said, well, I'm just going to put it down for a while, and I'll start over. And during that put it down for a while, my former partner, who I spent 5 years touring, 300 days a year with, my former partner and I were hitchhiking across Canada, doing house concerts and all kinds of stuff. And we ended up playing in Calgary at the home of Barry Luft. And Barry is the father of a very well-known singer-songwriter, banjo player, guitar player right now named Cara Luft. Cara is right around early 50s. I was at their house the day she was born. She lives in Winnipeg. She's a phenomenal musician. But someplace along the line on that visit, I was watching Barry play the banjo, and I said, "Hey, can you show me how you do that?" And he gave me my first banjo lesson, which is still how I teach. Barry is, he's in his early 80s. He's maybe a little over 10 years older than me. And I am still grateful for the time he took, the method he showed me, which I still use. It's the method I've shown everybody. I've taught a little banjo to Cathy King. I've taught a little banjo years ago to Rhiannon Giddens, to lots and lots of people. This is how I get people started. And if I hadn't gotten started that way, I might not have gotten hooked. And Barry's still out there. He's playing. He's put out a wonderful book for banjo players. And I just love giving him a shout out, because the love he gave me on that instrument got passed along. And he started learning how to play probably, I'm going to say, in the 60s in Calgary, where there wasn't another clawhammer player to go learning from. So he wrote a letter to Pete Seeger, Beacon, New York. "Dear Pete, I want to learn how to play the banjo. There aren't any teachers here. What do you suggest?" And of course, Pete sent him his How to Play the Five-String Banjo book with a little Pete signature on it. And that's what got Barry started.
Wow, that's great. Well, it's great to shout out our first teachers. That's awesome. But I do have to say, that banjo book, you can get lost in that banjo book. There's so much information, and I mean, we were talking about the How to Play the Five-String Banjo. It's like I think it's a blue book now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's hard. That book is hard. I've gone down many a path with that book. Because it has every style in it.
Well, exactly. Pete doesn't get the credit he deserves as possibly the most versatile banjo player out there.
Absolutely.
It was Pete who came up with that awesome version of Blue Skies.
Blue
that Tony
Skies.
Trischka now plays.
Yes.
It was, Pete creating strums that particularly made an audience want to sing along. It was I've been in the room when Pete made up a new lick. We were recording with him on the album Celebration, a tribute to Ella Jenkins, which was our second Grammy-winning album. And it was a multi-artist album paying tribute to Ella Jenkins, who is a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award winner based on her recordings for children, families, and teachers. And Pete we had assigned him a song called "The World Is Big, the World Is Small." And when we brought him into the studio, the first thing he did is he's sitting there looking at his banjo and he's working on a lick, and he looks at me, he goes, "I just made up this new lick for this song." And it sounded great. And we recorded it with him. He went in the studio and listened. He liked it. He said, "I didn't quite get that lick the way I wanted to." I said, "I'll tell you what, Pete, you've got a good sense of timing. Go in there, play that lick 10 times, and let's see if we can do some magic here." And he goes in there and he plays it 10 times, and he comes back out. And by the time he gets into the recording studio, we've put that lick in there, and he's like, "That sounds pretty good." And just the fact that he was still creating, he was still, in Pete's mind, the banjo could do anything. And it did.
Well, I'm looking at the time, and we kind of have to wrap up the banjo chat. But I do want to, I just want to ask you, one more question, kind of as we're finishing up. I read in this New York Times article recently. There was an article about when you're a kid, you prioritize the things that make you happy, like the things that you do or what makes you happy when you're a kid. And I was wondering, do you feel like, or do you? We've been talking about what drives you this kind of whole time, but like, do you feel like you have a childlike energy, or do you feel like you try to prioritize those things that are coming from like a space that's from like your child's soul, like your inner child kind of thing?
I would say that my fabulous partner of over 40 years has that childlike energy. And for me, I can have the wild eye energy from time to time. Is it childlike? I don't know. I feel like I do a lot of meditating through my music. I do a lot of contemplating through my music. I'm certainly willing to go out and have a good time, but I don't necessarily feel like that has to be childlike. On the other hand, when we go out and do a show for kids and families, and there's a great one online that we did for the Kennedy Center in 2022, I think it was, live kids and family concert with a fabulous band on the Kennedy Center's Millennium Stage. It was the Friday after Thanksgiving. I think when we're putting those shows together and doing those shows, we have our feet in multiple places. One is right inside a child's heart, and one is right inside a parent's heart. And we're trying to make that connection through joy. I am interested in having music that makes people think. I'm interested in having music that is a call to action. I'm also interested in making music that's just plain unfettered joy. And where that all comes from is too complicated for me to know.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to just mention that because I do feel like you have a joy in the music that you're creating, and you obviously have a drive and a focus. And it's just, sometimes it's important to kind of just be like, hey, this person is doing this, and I see that they have an energy ball that's pushing them forward. And I was just kind of trying to think about like where that comes from for you. And obviously there's a balance between you and Marcy, that works and is helping this creation of music and what you guys do along. And it's really awesome. It's really cool.
I'm willing to be sort of different things at different times. I'm thinking about a song that I wrote about 2 years ago. This is a song about nothing. And I literally wrote 4 verses about nothing. And I think it's hilarious. I don't think I've ever performed it You work at songwriting and you work and nothing, and then before you know it, you've spit it out, and there it was. And so
it's like, if you get stuck writing a song, just write about what's happening right then.
I'm willing to be in the spirit of constant play and see what happens.
Yeah, no, I love that. I really do. So cool. Well, thanks for being on the show. And I do want to mention that up top, I was talking about the Lincoln Center show with Cynthia Sayer, and you're going to be there with me, with Marcy Marxer, and we're going to be playing on March 29th at Lincoln Center.
Yeah, we're bringing along a crazy bass banjo. Marcy's bringing some of her hybrid vintage banjos. And I'm really excited to have that many banjos in one room at the same time and watch us all explode.
I know. I can't wait. It's going to be really, really fun.
And I might be calling you for help because it might require that I read more music than I'm ready for.
Well, let me tell you. Well, no, I'll tell you later. But I signed myself up for some banjo uke stuff. And then I got a whole thing of music and I realized I can't play that on the uke.
Oh, well, Marcy could do that, but she might have assigned Marcy to something else. So, maybe we'll have to swap some assignments without telling her.
Yeah, I told Cynthia, I'm like, I can do that on the banjo, but I can't do it on the uke. So anyway, if you're interested in seeing what this is all about, come to the show on March 29th, and I'll put a link below for it. It'll be a lot of fun. Anyway, thank you for listening, everybody out there. If you have any questions, you can email us at banjochatpodcast@gmail.com, Instagram @banjochat. All right, bye.
Take it easy.
If you'd like to support the Banjo Chat podcast, check out our new Patreon page at patreon.com/banjochat. Also, give us a like, a review, and subscribe, and that'll help boost it along so we can keep making these for you. Thanks.